Welcome to Success Authorities Conversation Street with Leadership Authority Peter Beaumont and with Business Culture Authority Ronn Lehmann and me, Linda Ruhland, Success Authorities founder.
I got another one that I think you probably can give a view on as well. McDonald's always had two suppliers for everything. And in fact, they started going out to three at one stage because experience teaches you that a fire can happen in a plant and you're down to, no plant alternative. And so any solid organization, I think, has to have alternative suppliers. But I don't see that happening. Taiwan is still the only source for many companies in this country for electronics. I don't see them looking elsewhere. I mean, what's you got a take on that at all, or am I just talking out of the top of my hat?
Well, you are, but I do have a take. Peter and I. Sorry, guys. This is the usual Peter and Paul exchange.
This is the usual conversation street.
Yes,
too.
Yeah, this is Peter and everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm glad. Peter, I was just reading an article on the plane last week on that, and there is no movement there. But the thought process is now we need to start. It was a whole thing on reshoring and bringing back the electronic, bringing back circuitry, and that's what happened to the auto industry, right? I mean,
right.
Exactly. Intel ran into some problems, but yeah, to your point, I think we're going to see it. In fact, we already are. The article said that there's going to be a resurgence in reshoring, especially starting with the IT, application and products and services and things like that.
I think a lot of small companies that we deal with and talk to, and our clients, have not taken that as a lesson, and they're still dealing with the same one supplier because they've known them for years, and if COVID has taught us anything in the supply chain, you've got to diversify your supply.
Yes, and with that, Peter, to back that up, on many of I watch a lot of I'll say the venture capital, whether it be, the pitch presentations, right?
Right.
Love doing that because it's always, even if it's not food and beverage, it's like, what are they what are they asking for? Really, continuity, contingency, and risk mitigation plans. Now, that's almost like a Carfax, right? That's one of the first things you never would have seen that maybe 5-10 years ago in these,
that's right.
Through M&A activity, private. Hey, let's go out, let's just let's get these shiny objects, let's get them in. But they got them in, and all of a sudden, these are discrete components or products within, and there is only one supplier, or we've got a problem here. I had a supplier, I won't go into it. I had one supplier. We had a unique product at Caribou that it was the product. It was came in from China or Taiwan. I can't remember, but it was a food product.
China would consider that the same thing. It's okay.
It was a problem. I mean, it was okay. Thank goodness it was an LTO. But it's for those limited time offer. But for some of those who, where they're standardized, it's a standardized product line and things, that's what your investment community is looking at right now. And I'm asked a lot when I'll do due diligence can I see their tier one suppliers, and do they have, again, think of the onion skin, right? Or what are their specific, how deep do you go on taking that same concept and that same thought process as you go through the supply chain? Granted, you can go down a rabbit hole on something, on indirect materials and things like that. But I'm talking, if companies at least start with their key components within their formulation, especially if some of those are registered and trademarked, you gotta have some backup there, or you're not going to get the investment following or the interest. That's always like one of the okay, yeah, it's interesting that's there. It's similar to that EOS too now, right? I know it's a Minneapolis thing, but that's another, from a process standpoint, that's another thing that always, oh, okay, these guys have that. These two boxes are checked already.
Yeah, that's true. EOS is being looked at by potential purchasers of companies as being something that's solid because they have an operating system. You're right. So did you have any, I know you're still in touch with what goes on at Caribou, at least you follow, obviously, same as I do with Coca-Cola, right? You're with the company 20 odd years, then you don't just leave it. So what issues did they have during COVID post, and how do they deal with them?
Primarily, I'll say labor at the stores was the biggest issue.
And they're still experiencing it, I know.
Yes, as you can see, right? I mean, that's from a supply chain standpoint, there were some issues that came up on, I won't say the A line, but more like the secondary or second tier product line, some of those LTO, and I could see that in some of the locations and some of the conversations I had. I think one of the biggest concerns was obviously, you think about the green coffee coming in on containers from all around the world. I mean, we were always managing the traffic of containers coming in from South America, obviously from Africa, from Indonesia. And you remember when we had the backup at the ports and things that there was a lot of taking the coconuts and shuffling those around. And that wasn't, I'll say that back to your point on if you recall the cost of a container at that time, remember something about
it was 35,000.
Yes, think about making a change on something like that.
Right.
So those were some of the, okay, we got to reroute. What are we going to do? And we had to work that through. There was always the partnerships then that we had with our other brethren under the umbrella, and that was Pete's Coffee, Cura, Green Mountain, Intelligentsia. So, I mean, there were some. Thank goodness there was some cohesiveness there where, you could trade those elements. But yeah, that's, I was reading in that same logistics feed yesterday that it looks like, again, it's happening right now, first week of June anyway, that there's some issues again on the West Coast ports with labor. It hasn't gone anywhere yet, but it's already, the voices are out there already. So who knows? That could be another problem.
Yeah. I actually, talking about ports, I mean, that was the bottleneck, but what's your take on the fact that we're too reliant upon the road system for distribution in this country?
Well,
or is that even a fair comment?
It's, Peter, it's one of those that like we would accept as, okay, this is what we have to deal with, right? Yes, right. You're right. I think that's, and as that infrastructure begins to, encounter its challenges, look at the freight industry. And I was also thinking about, I wanted to dovetail this in with not only the suppliers, but being very, proactive in scrutinize your transportation base as well. And we had set up I guess back at the time, I was smart enough to know what I didn't know. And I've lost that skill now. I think I know everything. But
I think a few of us have.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure, I can do that. But we actually got any 4PL to, it's like, okay, we don't understand transportation. Let's bring a 4PL. They actually rented space in our they had office space and everything there, and take care of, here's what we need. We have frozen, we have refrigerated, we've got, as the FSMA laws went into place, we wanted to make sure that we were on top of that. And from a transportation standpoint, let's find the best carriers. Let's set up the carrier relationships instead of we did not shop ad hoc. And I know, and I still wouldn't do that. It's like, get your supplies fine. It goes back to my optimization theory that, okay, you're going to save a few cents here on, well, wait a minute. I want to make sure this carrier is insured, and they've got everything. And let me see, who are the brands, who are their other customers that are in our field that they're, oh, okay. And are they in this particular region, and how are their service levels and things like that? They had these algorithms on a TMS system that they had, transportation management system, that they had put together for us, and it was custom. It was pretty cool. And at the time we had many folks, C.H. Robinson, we had a lot of folks in the area here, and they helped us out from an ad hoc basis. But we had to set up a self-distribution network, and I think you and I have had those conversations that. I'll go to a good example was your company, Coke. They said, hey, Paul, we got to do if I recall, a 10 case minimum drop at these stores. And I said, we can't do that. I said, we only have X amount of square feet in here, and this is our shelf. This is what we have. And Coke, we had come from Pepsi. Michael Coles brought the Coke brand in from Pepsi. So we had just done all that. And I was putting myself out there going, oh boy, what? I've lit that fuse. But it was interesting. The Coca-Cola group here in Minneapolis, we actually set up then an arrangement. Again, I'm talking years ago now, so I don't know what the arrangements. Let me make sure that I'm clear on that. I don't know what those arrangements are now. But it was great to work from a relationship standpoint with the Coke plant. I think it was in Eagan. And we would simply pick up, they allowed us to pick up a pickup fee we would redistribute through our system. It was great. They worked with us. And I'll just say there was a significant savings there, not only from a service standpoint, but think about freeing up the space inside inside our stores, our back rooms. That's why, Peter, we weaned ourselves away from full service with the Cisco's and the Reinhardts and Gordons. Yes, we use, again, I've left now. Who knows what they're, with all the acquisitions, where they're at. But at the time, we decided, self-distribution was the way to go. We saved lots of money doing that, and we were able to discreetly satisfy each one of the stores in a regional area by utilizing the local dairies. They loved it, right? Now we're adding on to we would simply do a cross dock in their location, and they would take care of the rest for us. The frozen would come in from a warehouse in Wisconsin, and we would just match that up, and of course send it across the road if we're going to Arizona or, across the state. But we learned to set up these supply lines, and because as these thoughts come into my mind, my dementia, I got to make sure we would also manage full truckloads. It was like, I was not a fan of LTL. It was like, so what we would do then is
LTL,
less than truckload. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. And you know how expensive LTL costs are. Yeah. So we always optimize through this particular group that they would take care of. Then they would fill out the rest of the trailer with orders to our grocery lines, to our our office coffee services and things. And we'd go into a particular network like the Carolina region or Atlanta, Georgia. But along with that, they would leverage that load with several stops. It was brilliant. Again, not my idea. It had a great staff and great talent behind me it was somebody's idea there to put that together. So
It's funny just describing the way that you took back control really of your distribution in the Coke thing. Ron and I were at a meeting yesterday. God, is it only yesterday morning, Ron? Where Terry Wu was talking to us about stress, and two of the factors there was to reduce stress is control and predictability. And those are two of the things that you basically did by taking back control from Coke on your own distribution. I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah. But I think the relationship thing is what I take really from what you're talking about.
Yes, you absolutely, Peter. It was like, hey, we need you as a
partner.
We need you as I'm glad you said that, because that was what I had partnerships down here that so many, as as you go into your clients and talk to them, most are starting to see the value of a partnership versus it's, remember the 80s and the 90s, and you watch the movies and it was all about us and profit, and you've got to make sure your partner is profitable as well, especially going back to your, when you talk about your supply outages and they made during COVID, a lot of these suppliers made their decisions based on a number of reasons. And one of them was a relationship too as well. I know financially it was the first, but if there was and the also rans, what do you think if you're in that 20 group? Who pays on time, right? Who honors our lead times, right? Who plays by our rules? And when we started business reviews, that I asked our procurement group then, when they sat down with our major suppliers, and they had to do this once a quarter, sometimes in the tier 2 was at least once a year, but I'd have them send them out a questionnaire. Yes, they're our supplier, we're their customer, but I want to know, are we paying on time? Are we are we, how are we as a customer? And they would, it worked out well because they felt like that they had some ownership and they had some say in how the relationship was going. So I don't know if you're doing that or whatever, but it worked out great, back in the day.
I find that fascinating because I'll tell you why. I wonder if those relationships, and Ron, here's where my head's going now, is there's a culture thing here, which is, right, that partnership has to, it develops a culture between your supplier and so and I wonder if those relationships held or have held since COVID, where it was almost forced.
Isn't that it? That would, Peter, I'd like to ask a third party. That would be interesting because
it would, wouldn't it?
As we find out, even as you hear the co-manufacturer, right? Let's go to the co-man, and especially with the with the visionaries, and they have their product, and God bless them, they're all ready to they're ready to go into their co-manufacturer. And I had a client who had several SKUs and wanted to customize their packaging, and I was like, wait a minute, why don't we go in here first and let's find out what they're using? If it's brand centric, if that's one thing. If it isn't, if it's indirect, or we can leverage together with them, let's optimize the purchases between the two of us, and it's a win for all. And I think a lot of the more advanced and the progressive companies, they've adopted that, but I find that a lot with those that are either have been locked away from that for a while, or they're just getting started, or it's never entered into their mind. They're going into a co-manufacturer like, I'm going to go in and get everything. No, these folks have to be profitable. I was a co-manufacturer as well at Caribou. We would do some products every once in a while for, I said, we've got to make sure that they're profitable.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Conversation Street. For more information or to submit a question, email Success Authorities at inquire@successauthorities.com.